My daily take today over at HartmannReport.com is titled, "Why Do So Many Americans Believe the Lies Pushed by the GOP?" And it points out, Donald Trump is still pushing the lie that he won the 2020 election. It's a naked lie. Everybody knows it's a lie. It's been tested 60 different times in court. It took it all the way to the Supreme Court. Everybody says, no, there was no fraud. You lost the election by 7 million votes. Go back to Mar-a-Lago and, resume your shipping of classified documents to Saudi Arabia. It's like, come on. But science, it turns out, is on Trump's side. Not the science of elections, the science of propaganda. New findings from psychologists at universities in California and Georgia have now found that the more often you repeat a lie, the more likely it is to be believed. And FDR warned us about this back in the day, and we should have taken him seriously. It's kind of a historical footnote now. But at the time, the Republicans were claiming that, number one, FDR, this was when he was running for president the fourth time in 1944. And during his campaign, and the Republicans were saying that he hadn't prepared America for World War II. Well, the fact of the matter is, as we've discussed before, that as Rex Stout wrote a book about called The Illustrious Dunderheads, Republicans were constantly on the floor of the House and Senate demanding that America not intimidate Mr. Hitler. And we can do business with Mr. Hitler. And, Prime Minister Hitler or Chancellor Hitler is our friend. And I mean, this was the Republican mantra right up until we started the war. So, number one, they were arguing that Roosevelt hadn't prepared us for the war. Number two, they were arguing that the Republican Great Depression was caused by the Democrats. They were actually trying to argue that in the 1944 election. So this is what Franklin Roosevelt had to say about that.
Remember, a number of years ago, there was a book, Mein Kampf, written by Hitler himself. The technique was all set out in Hitler's book, and it was copied by the aggressors of Italy and Japan. According to that technique, you should never use a small force. Always a big one, for its very fantastic nature would make it more credible. If only you keep repeating it over and over and over again.
There you go. And science, it turns out, is behind this. This is from this research that was just published, a psychologist at the University of California in Georgia. It was published in the journal Cognitive Research. Quote, "Repeated information is often perceived as more truthful than new information. This finding is known as the illusory truth effect and is typically thought to occur because repetition increases processing fluency." That's the speed with which we recognize things, basically. They go on to say, because fluency and truth are frequently correlated in the real world. In other words, the more often you discover that there's a bear on the other side of that hill over there, the more likely you are to believe that there might be a bear over there. Because fluency and truth are frequently correlated in the real world, people learn to use processing fluency as a marker for truthfulness. So, FDR warned about this back in the 30s, but, here we are all over again. And, the Republican lies haven't actually changed a lot since FDR's time. But I put together a list of them for this op-ed today at HartmannReport.com. The first one, tax cuts produce prosperity. A major study published 2 years ago by the London School of Economics, looking at 18 wealthy OECD countries over a 50-year period. And what they found, this is a quote, "We find that major reforms reducing taxes on the rich lead to higher income inequality. The effect remains stable in the medium as such reforms do not have any significant effect on economic growth and unemployment." In other words, cutting taxes on the rich only does one thing. It makes the rich richer, and it makes the nation in debt. It increases the national debt. That's it. That's all it does. I guess that's two things. That's all it does. The second argument is that immigrants bring crime. In fact, immigrants are between 200 and 400% less likely to commit crimes, ranging from violent crimes to property crimes, than are American citizens. It's well established. I mean, if you're an immigrant in this country, you went through hell to get here. You want to get bounced out? No, you keep your head down. Number 3, increasing the minimum wage worsens inflation. In fact, there has never been any proof of correlation here. Scientific studies have dug into this. The closest they could get was one study that found that a 10% increase in the minimum wage might produce a 1/10 of 1% increase in inflation. That's, 10 cents on the $100 product. But even that hasn't been proven. If there was any time in history, the minimum wage was put into place in 1938. It's been raised 22 times. If any one of those times it had produced inflation, every Republican would remember the year. They'd be saying, oh, you don't want what happened in 1958 to happen again. But there is no year. So, they can't say that. Another Republican lie that again, these get repeated over and over and over again in the right-wingosphere, from Fox News to right-wing talk, hate radio to all these right-wing websites. Union bosses are bleeding workers dry. Well, in fact, union bosses work on a salary. They work for nonprofits. They don't make a lot of money. It's the actual corporate bosses who are bleeding their workers dry. Another, American elections are corrupt. No, Trump tried this 60 different times before courts, including a lot of Trump-appointed judges. Didn't work. Even the Supreme Court said no. Another Republican lie, guns will keep your home safe. No, it turns out that the more guns you have in your home, the more likely people are to die. In fact, they're twice as likely to die of homicide, 3 times as likely to die of suicide if there is a gun in the home. Another Republican lie, America is a Christian nation, as the founders intended. No, the founders didn't intend that. America was the first explicitly secular nation in the history of the world, or at least modern history. Another Republican lie, global warming is junk science, and CO2 is good for plants, so we need more of it. I shouldn't even have to point this out, but this is a lie that every single Republican in Congress continues to promote. Another is that Republicans favor democracy around the world instead of dictatorship. But every one of these lies are promoted over and over and over again. And as I started this rant, now science shows that the more frequently people hear things, no matter how absurd they are, no matter how unreal they are, no matter how untruthful they are, the more frequently they hear it, the more likely they are to believe it. And the big megaphone is in the hands of the right-wingers, not the left-wingers. There's 1,500 right-wing radio stations in America. There's maybe 100 left-wing ones. You got right-wing, you got Fox News, you got the New York Post, you got the Wall Street Journal.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's all right-wing media all the time promoting right-wing lies and Republican lies that people believe because they get repeated so often.